Welcome to Inflection Points. Join hosts Carla Guzzetti and Tim Harrison as we explore Extreme's vision of the infinite enterprise. We see a world where people have become infinitely distributed around the globe, which means businesses must work at scale and focus increasingly on becoming consumer-centric to connect with each and every one of them.
Tim, I'm gonna sound like you for a minute.
Uh-oh.
Old.
Oh, there it is.
So, you know, I'm gonna get on my small soapbox and I'm gonna say I really can't stand passwords. I hate multi-factor authentication. It takes up a lot of time. I can never remember. It seems like we're spending all of this money on all these other things. There should be a better way. Shouldn't there be a better way?
What are you trying to say?
What I'm trying to say is I hate bleeping passwords.
Got it. Okay. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I give my laptop the finger all the time when I try and log in.
That does make me feel better. And it is quite odd that both you and I are upset at the same thing, which is why I feel old now.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Okay. Well, you know, and I'll tell you, I get really annoyed at trying to get into my own home sometimes. Maybe that's sad to say, but you know, I have a smart lock, and I'm putting that in air quotes. Bunny ears.
Podcast listeners.
Yes, because this is definitely not on video. But yeah, I have a smart lock, and when I'm trying to get into my own home, you know, and I've got my son Sasha balanced on one arm, and I've got, you know, bags of groceries and fish and, you know, all sorts of things that I'm holding on to. I don't know why fish. I get to the door and like I can't press the buttons, right? Which is kind of silly. And Sasha's sitting there screaming at me, and you know the fish is getting antsy, and I just want to get through the door, right? And it's very difficult to do that. So, you know, technology has given us all these new smart ways to make our lives easier, but it actually becomes a different challenge rather than, you know, having a seamless experience of being able to get through my door or give my laptop the finger and have everything work that way.
Well, so now I'm wondering about two things. One, I'm wondering why you're buying so much fish, but we're not going to go down that road.
Fair.
Now I'm wondering also.
It's good for you here.
It is. So we talk a lot about, you know, making everything more consumer centric, particularly because of the infinite enterprise. Everybody has to make tech more seamless, a lot easier. My question is, why haven't we done this for security yet? Isn't that the next logical place to go? Why have we not figured out some ways so that you can hold the fish, the baby, and just look at your door and it would unlock rather than having to press the pin buttons and remember your code and everything? Why have we not figured out that I don't need multi-factor authentication to get into Teams? Why have we not done this? Does that seem like a logical place?
It does. It's a great question, and you know, when I think about it, it seems like we continue to make security more complex by means of, you know, different ways of authenticating because we think that makes life easier to be secure. So maybe we're looking at things the wrong way. Maybe we need to do something different if that's not working.
That's what I'm saying. Where are we in this moving things forward and making things easier when it comes to security? I was expecting to unlock my door with my eyeball by now. You know, I should be worried about, you know, if someone's going to steal my eyeball and if they're going to be able to replace it. That's what the movies have promised me. Where is it?
That's terribly surprising and rather uncomfortable, but I understand your point. But you know, I think the best thing to do is to ask the question to somebody who's an expert in that particular field. And fortunately, we happen to know somebody, and we've been able to get a hold of him. His name is Alexey Khitrov. He is the president of ID R&D, and his goal is to make security frictionless, to make it seamless and invisible so that indeed, Carla, you can open the door with your eyeball, preferably still fully intact. But I think Alexey's the right guy to be able to take us on a journey through, you know, why are we still using passwords and what is it going to take for us to get to the panacea of biometrics and that seamless, frictionless experience.
Well, I think it's safe to say that Alexey has found his fan base here. So I'm really excited to go and find out what he's got to say and when this is going to get better.
and that'll turn me back into the only crotchety one on the podcast.
Huzzah! Alexey, I'm so excited that you're here. And but I'm going to really just start with our first question, which is a big one. What do you do and how do you do it? I mean, you're in such an incredible field. So I think let's just start with the big wide open question. What's going on?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And what we're doing at ID R&D is we're doing biometrics. We're doing biometrics and we're doing liveness. So we're developing core technologies that answering two core questions when it comes to authentication and personification of services. And these two questions are, is this the right person? And secondly, is this a person? And from the point of security, sometimes the second one is actually even more important than the first one. And then the way that we're doing it is kind of distinguishes ourselves from the rest of the market, because we're putting a lot of emphasis on ability to deliver these capabilities in a frictionless way. The core idea is that we as humans, when we see each other, when we meet each other, if we met before, we don't ask ourselves for passwords or driving licenses. When I'm gonna home today, I'm gonna see my wife, and she's not gonna ask me for my driving license to make sure it's me. She knows me, right?
She doesn't.
Well,
I should get my husband to stop doing that.
Or if I go see my friends, to have a drink, they're not gonna ask the same question. But if I'm gonna go and do something with my bank, they can ask me for a lot of questions. Although ironically, I actually have a longer relationship with my bank than with some of my friends. So what we're seeing, so here we're seeing the need for the enterprise, for technology to catch up to that and create the same experience. The need for friction when it comes to security and authentication comes not from the need for friction, but from the fact that technology was not able to deliver this frictionless experience. And that's what ID R&D is doing. So we're trying to build the capabilities where that can allow people to communicate with the enterprise, with the technology, with devices, in the same way that we communicate with other humans. So and we're bringing the security aspect of it.
You mentioned an interesting word there, liveness. Can you describe what liveness is? It sounds like a concept. Is that your concept? Explain how that works.
Absolutely. So liveness is the ability to distinguish between a person and the presentation attack. And the presentation attack can come in any way, shape, or form. So it can come as a picture, it can come as a mask, it can come as a cutout, it can come as a video, it can come as a recording. So basically any representation of the person other than the person, him or herself. So if somebody were to try to break into my bank account that maybe using facial recognition, they're not going to try to find my non-existing identical twin, but they're just going to go into my Facebook page and print my fantastic vacation photos and just stick it to the camera. So the liveness technology is a technology that enables to differentiate between me being in front of the device and somebody is trying to show some type of an image in my place. And typically the way that this problem was solved before is through so-called active liveness. So in order to establish that there's a person, not a photograph, the idea was that let's make this person do something, and then we'll check whether that person is doing the right thing, and therefore there is a person there, which kind of created a very weird and strange experiences sometimes, right? So like turn your head this way and that way, blink 3 times, move your phone in a certain way if you're doing it on the mobile phone. My favorite one was the when the company was asking to follow a red dot on the screen with your nose. So you had to kind of do a little bit of jiggy.
So everybody's going to be dancing.
Circus seal kind of.
Exactly. So what we're doing is that we're creating a technology that does liveness in a passive way. So we're doing this analysis based on a single frame, on a single image when it comes to the facial recognition. So we no longer need any active participation of the person. We just take the selfie that a person already takes for the purposes of the facial recognition and apply our technology, our product, and we can answer the question whether there is a person in front of the camera or it's some type of representation attack.
So, I mean, I think that's fascinating. And I think that means in the future, I'll be unlocking my iPhones by zigzagging my eyes all over the place. And I'm going to look like a crazy lady, more so than already. But I think one of the things that you also mentioned is a frictionless experience. And I think that's really interesting. And I want to take a moment to unpack that a little bit, because there's a lot there. To your point, when you come home every day, your wife doesn't ask you to show you your driver's license to her, right? She knows who you are. I think that probably right now, a lot of people feel there's a lot of security in paper documents and, multi-factor authentication and, passwords that they can change themselves. And I think that we have that extra step probably because it makes everybody feel secure. So what do you mean by frictionless? Is it eliminating those steps? And how do we make people feel more comfortable about this now frictionless world?
Well, this is a great question, because when it comes to security, sometimes people do feel that if I'm being asked to do something, if there's some extra steps in the process that makes this process more secure. The reality is that it's not necessarily true. And some technologies, some processes do rely on these extra steps to provide the security, but in technology, things are moving very quickly, and the liveness capabilities and the biometric capabilities that are available right now can provide the same level of security or even greater level of security than traditional methodology like passwords. Because passwords were invented by the Roman army about 2,000 years ago. And so not necessarily one of the latest technologies. And we're thankful to the Roman army for inventing this. We've been using this for a couple of thousands of years, but I think it's time to upgrade the user experience a little bit. And again, I think you're right. It's a human nature to think that, if I'm made to suffer a little bit on a regular basis, that I'm doing it for a reason. If I'm updating my passwords on a monthly basis, I need to have one capital letter, 3 special signs, and my blood type somewhere in it. It really makes it unbreakable. But the reality is that the biometrics are actually more accurate. Mm-hmm. And with the addition of liveness, they're more protected, and we can we can make people's lives so much better if we don't make them suffer through the constant password reset. Just think of the hours, days, and centuries that we as a humanity losing through the constant password reset. So if we can eliminate that part of human life, I think my job here would be done on this planet. So.
Well, I just learned something new about the length of time we've been using passwords. But so this is where I get really curious about the frictionless part. I have a smart lock on my home. Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. And it's got a key slot, right? I have a key fob for my car. I guess I can press the button, or within proximity of the car, it'll unlock it. But it also has a backup key built in. Why has it taken so long? And what do you see from a vision standpoint that will change the nature of how we engage with frictionless security, and that those backup mechanisms can go away and biometrics will solve the problem?
Well, I think it's happening, and I think it's slowly happening, and it's just gonna be so technologically we're pretty much there. I think it's more of a matter of getting used to it and applying this technology in the right time, in the right way. And by right way, I mean in the way that it's acceptable by society, it's acceptable by people, that they feel more comfortable around that. I'll give you an example. So in Moscow, they're starting to pay for the subway rides with the face. So you just show up at the subway station and they scan your face, and if you're prepaid, you go in. Mm-hmm. In that society, that seems like an option that a lot of people like. In some Western society, I don't think that people in London would appreciate that right now. They'll think that the Big Brother is watching.
Right.
So I think that the adaptation of this technology is as much of a function of technological capabilities as the society's ability to accept it. And this ability to accept it will come from ability of the people to control it and have a choice in it. I think we're seeing some backlash around facial recognition right now. Facebook just announced that we're going to stop using it. But I think the key issue here is that there's a difference between authentication and surveillance. And the key difference is that surveillance is something that's done to you, and authentication is something that you're doing yourself. So if people have control, if people understand that they can enroll into the system and use the benefits of it, and also one of the benefits among many that we just discussed is that now I don't need to remember all these passwords. I think that's a fantastic benefit. So if I choose to go through the route of biometrics in order to get access to this benefit, and that's my choice, I feel comfortable about it. If somebody is putting surveillance cameras on my street and I have no idea what the government is doing with it, there you might have a problem. So I think it's just a matter of understanding this process of acceptance of the technology in society and ability to give people a choice to opt in and opt down is one of the keys.
Do you think that that's a generational thing, the acceptance of biometrics as not surveillance, but as access technology? I'm thinking of, my phone. My phone allows me to unlock originally with Touch ID and now Face ID. Sorry for using product names, but I've gotten used to it, and I still have some people who say, well, that makes me uncomfortable. But I think, maybe Generation Z have gotten used to this, and this is how they unlock their phones. Is this how this is going to progress with a generational change?
This is how they unlock the phone, and then it's going to be how they unlock their front doors, and then it's going to be how they unlock their cars, and this is how they're going to get access to their bank accounts, and this is how they're going to pay for groceries in the store. So I think the usability and security and a combination of both is something that will inevitably drive the acceptance of this technology and an adaptation of this technology. But let the people choose. And I think once they understand how it works, they understand that they have control, they'll feel much more comfortable about it. Right, so it's just a matter of trusting, and that's why you see Facebook saying we're not going to use the facial recognition anymore. But you're not going to hear the same statement from Apple anytime soon, because it's definitely here to stay on the phones. Whereas the way the Facebook did the implementation, they actually they put less control in the hands of the users, and I think they're paying for it now.
I like that approach. That's really interesting. That there's an opt-in opportunity, but there's also sort of a more forthcoming. This is what we're doing with that data, versus we're using facial recognition technology in the background, and yes, we're doing it for you, but you don't necessarily know why. I think that's a really interesting differentiation. I like that.
I also think, though, that it leads us into a bit of a privacy conversation, right? And I think that's part of the backlash that we see from Facebook. And also, I think, you could potentially see some instances where, let's say it's not working, it's not recognizing. How do you troubleshoot that? Who do you reach out to? I think those seem like some of the obvious obstacles around adoption in the immediate future. I completely understand. I think Generation Z and the generation after that, totally, you are completely spot on. That is how they log into their phones. It's what they're used to. But in the immediate term, how do you see companies overcoming some of those obstacles?
Well, I think there's a number of misconceptions about the technology that you mentioned, and I can add another one. So So what if somebody breaks into the database of a bank that's using facial recognition or voice recognition, and then they steal my image? Mm-hmm. Well, and then I'm forever compromised, right? So whereas it's funny that it's actually it's much safer to use the facial recognition than your social security number, because if somebody gets hold of your social security number, you are compromised for a long time, and the change is very difficult. But if somebody gets your picture from the bank, well, they can get your picture on Facebook. You're posting your pictures already, so why are you concerned about that? That's kind of beyond me. Like if
they can't get my liveness, right?
Yeah. So
that's the interesting point. Yeah,
but that's exactly it. So, but if you're deploying technology like liveness, then the bad guys would not be able to use this data, right? So they can have your picture, but how are they going to present it? If they're going to print it, if they're going to put it on the screen and try to use it to get access to your accounts or compromise your identity in any way, liveness would stop them from doing that. So that's a key component here, to give the confidence to the people that the technology is safe. And we have a lot of ways to make it secure without actually bothering you, without asking you to do all these additional steps in the user experience. And that's what kind of started the conversation. So that's why the passive aspect of the liveness is so important, that we can make it secure without making your life more difficult.
Alexey, when we talk about security, there's often the security of the communication, there's the security of the data at the end. Do you see an opportunity for an ability to revoke your biometrics and a process by which somebody can say, I no longer wish to engage with this particular organization, and have them have that information about me? Do you foresee a way that a user can have that control to be able to opt back out and remove their data from that?
Absolutely. I think when if you're ending your relationship with the bank or with your account with any type of service, you absolutely should be able to not just to cancel your account, but also revoke or destroy your biometric data. So I see no problem with that from a technology perspective.
So it's really about adoption. It's how people adopt biometrics and how they manage that. Coming from a former data center background, we had sort of multi-factor biometrics, so fingerprint, weight measurements, and things like that. Which is always very awkward. It was never published, but is that acceptable in the way forward, having that multi-factor version, even when it's frictionless? So you've got liveness, you've got, I guess, the visual identity that you are. What about the multi-factors of that? Is there a consistent checkpoint of those biometrics to make sure the person who's still sort of sitting in front of it is that person?
So I think that there are two-part question here, actually, because one is about the multi-factor and the other one about the continuous authentication, not just at the point of login, but throughout the transaction, throughout your interaction with the particular product solution or the enterprise. I'm a huge believer and I'm a huge fan of multi-factor if it's done correctly. And by correctly, again, we're going back to the frictionless experience. If you're just stacking steps in the user experience on top of each other, that's not really helping people. If you can collect data, a lot of different data at the same time, that would really increase the security of this transaction greatly. So I'll give you an example. So right now we're looking at each other, and we're also speaking to each other. So we can collect the voice and face at the same time, and we don't need to do any additional steps here. So we can apply voice and face biometrics, and by the way, voice and face liveness at the same time without any additional effort. And by doing that, we can again get the even higher rates of security without inconveniencing the customers. And the same can be applied to the continuous contact, because as we're engaging in the digital world, again, with different products, with different solutions, technologies, IoT devices, banks, whatever, as we're in the process of this this communication, there are a lot of data points that can be used continuously for this frictionless analysis. It can be done based on the visual. If there's a camera involved, it can be done through voice. If there's a voice involved, it can be done through device, for various types of behavioral checks, the way you're walking, the way you're holding the device, where you are geographically, and there are many other checks that can be done, and that can be done kind of in the background. The key again is to make sure that people are comfortable with it, and to make people comfortable is to, on the one side, properly explain the benefits, and on the other side, give people control.
So I think that it's really incredible, and it feels like I'm sold. I mean, I think it sounds much more secure, so I'm all in. My question is, when do you really see this starting to happen on a regular basis? When does biometrics start to interface? So when I have to do my multi-factor authentication to log in to my Microsoft apps on my computer, when are they going to start? When am I going to have to start dancing in front of my computer for that? And, how quickly do you see this integrating into our day-to-day? When is it happening? Is it next year? Is it 5 years? And where do you see us in 10 or 20 years with biometrics? Because it seems like the obvious next step.
Well, I think that, if you do want to dance be in front of your device, I don't think that technology should be stopping you. So I'm all for it. But as far as the use of biometrics, I think it's already started. I think we're not at the we're not in the beginning of this journey. We're in the middle of it, and this is. And where the journey is going is to the place where we can have access to products and services and devices without any additional steps in the user experience, and being able to receive data and services and conduct transactions in a natural way. So the type of user experience that we're going to is a natural user experience. Going back to the example of us communicating with friends and family, we should be able to communicate in the same way with technology and do it in a safe and secure manner. And we're already using the biometrics. We mentioned that's how we're unlocking our phones now.
Right.
That's where a lot of the apps, like banking apps, they have the fingerprint. When you call the call center, a lot of the call centers are utilizing voice biometrics.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're already using. It's just the question is that the current user experience that the kind of the previous generation of technology was dictating is not the user experience that the next generation of this technology can deliver.
Okay.
And that's the key change right now, is that it's not so much whether we're using it or not, but how we're using it and how and where this adaptation gets us. Because the better the user experience is, the more experience are going to be covered, the more parts of our life are going to be covered by this capability.
Not to put you on the spot, Alexey, but do you consider yourself a visionary?
I consider myself a very lucky person that works with a lot of very smart guys in our R&D team, because what's exciting about this industry is that it's such a fast-moving space, and every time we have meetings with our R&D team, and in our company, and sorry for the shameless plug here, like we're focused around the R&D capability, because that's the way to deliver this new user experiences. That's the way to to deliver on this vision that we have is through the through getting the technology to do things that it couldn't do that it couldn't do before. So that's the most exciting part of the journey, because when we have discussions and you push the guys, can we deliver this, and then no, we can't, and then 2 hours later, well maybe we can. So.
Spoken like a true visionary.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. Well, that's great, Alexey. We really appreciate all the insight and the view into the future. I think that's fantastic. We really appreciate the conversation.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Carla, after your, shall we say, mini rant earlier, how do you feel now? How do you feel about security and biometrics?
I think I feel conflicted. I'm going to be honest. I feel conflicted. On the one hand, yes, thank you, Alexey, for taking all of my concerns away and annoyances about multi-factor authentication. On the other hand, he made a very good point, which even though I'm irritated by it, it is a thing, which is I feel more secure because I'm doing it myself. There is this kind of, oh, well, if I'm the only one that can get into my phone and I'm the only person that taps that, even though really anybody can unlock my phone, but I'm telling myself these extra steps mean something to me. Somehow that makes it more secure.
The complexity brings more protection.
Exactly. Like somehow just because it's more complex, it's a little bit, it's safer, which is nonsense. I know logically that's nonsense, but it does make me feel that way. So I think, you know, it's going to, and I think that I like to think that I'm an early adopter of technology. I would say it's going to be a little uncomfortable thinking that my bank is going to have my specific eye dance or recognize my retinas or whatever it is that it's going to take to unlock my bank account. That's going to be a new turn. And now I feel old 2 times. I'm old because I'm complaining about technology, and I'm old because the new technology makes me uncomfortable. What is going on?
That's fair. Welcome to my world. You know, hopefully you don't have to give your eye away to the bank, but yeah, I understand that. I'm fascinated in how people are going to adopt this going forward, because we do have sort of a legacy of passwords. And, you know, even Alexey himself mentioned that, you know, this is thousands of years old, the concept of the password, right? Going back to the Roman army. So it does take a little while to get people to change their minds, but, you know, technology is moving so quickly that it's possible that in the next generation, they're not even going to think about this. It's going to be just natural state for them. And I think that's what Alexey's, you know, focused on and going for, which is fascinating and you know, terrifying to somebody of my generation and age. But I think that we need to understand that sometimes technologies are made for those that are going to come after us, and those that get the concept and sort of naturalize and inherit and inhabit that concept. So I too am a little uncomfortable. I like the idea of being able to change my password at leisure and have it not related specifically to my biometric appearance, if you will. But I'm sure that you know, my son will open my front door with his face at some point, and hopefully not crashing through it, but just the ability to go through and naturally feel comfortable with that, and to know that his biometrics are the key to the car, to the house, to, you know, to the bank, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, I mean, I do think if we can adopt this at scale, it's a fundamentally different life, right?
Yes.
The amount of time that will be saved, the ease of access to things, it will be completely different from how we're currently working. And it will save us a significant amount of time. It will forever alter how we're working with things. But to your point, Tim, I think to get to a point where this is really adopted at scale, it's not even Generation Z, it's the generation after them, and potentially the generation after them, before we get to a level of getting out of our brains that we have to go through these steps to authenticate things. And but I think that this is where we're going to go. And it's obvious this is where we're going to go, because as if you think about this, it's incredibly consumer centric, right? It's
this
thinking
is
about
it's the ultimate in consumer centric. It's
exactly.
It's the user itself, right?
Yes, exactly. It's the user, ourselves, and making sure that it's easier for us to access all of the tools that we need in order to live within the infinite enterprise. So I mean, I think that this is a natural next step, and even if it might not be everywhere in 5 years, I'd say in at least 10 to 15, everybody will be, you'll see this aggressively more adopted over and over. And I think it will just become commonplace by the, not Generation Z, but potentially the generation after that, because we're going to be moving faster and faster towards consumer-centric technology because of the infinite enterprise, right?
Yeah, agreed. And finally, that fish will be able to get through my door in a relatively fast amount of time. So in many ways, I look forward to it. In many ways, I have a bit of a hesitation, but I'm fine with eventually being the old man ranting at the VCR. So the time will come. I look forward to it in so many ways, but I have to get out of my own way and allow technology to take its course.
So you'll be ranting at the VCR and I'll be staring at it going, I feel uncomfortable about this, but we're going to do it anyway. It's going to be good.
Just keep your eyes open. Join us for our next episode of Inflection Points, where we ask the question, are we building technology for people or simply because we can? Has our approach to technology changed? Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.